Welcome to the Rooted Home Life podcast, where we talk about cultivating home and chasing adventure with our kids and finding the balance in all of it. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, who has been an inspiration to me from the very beginning of my homeschooling journey. I found her very early on, and she has been a source of encouragement and inspiration. And I've had the pleasure to spend time with her in person on more than one occasion since then, and I count it a blessing to know her. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea as I sit down with September McCarthy to talk all about hope for your homeschool. Hi, September. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I am so happy to be here. It's taken us a while to connect because we're busy homeschool moms, but this is a great podcast to share our hearts on homeschooling. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited for us to finally be able to get together and talk about hope for your homeschool, because I just know how encouraged I always am getting a chance to chat with you. And I know that it's going to be an encouragement to moms who need hope, because we all need hope, right? Everyone needs hope. And then as moms, we definitely need hope. And then as homeschool moms, we certainly need an extra measure, an extra dose of hope. So could you share a little bit about yourself for those moms that may not be familiar with you, just a little bit about you and maybe your homeschooling journey?
Well, my homeschool journey is now almost 3 decades. So that's a lot of information to share. But if I were to sum it up in a nutshell, I would just say, I have 10 kids that I've been homeschooling for almost 30 years. And the oldest is now 32 and the youngest is 13. So I'm in the home stretch with my last three to homeschool them. And now I have grandchildren that are also being homeschooled, which I never in my life even dreamed of when we began this journey. It was not something on my radar. I didn't even expect my children to homeschool. So we're a second generation homeschooling, and I'm helping them homeschool their children with not only a hybrid homeschool center that I started, but also materials I create for them that I guess I get to also share it with the world. It's not just for my grandkids. And then I just have found so much hope in each season of our homeschooling. And that's why I wrote that book, Hope for Your Homeschool. The subtitle is Start Strong, Stay the Course, and Finish with Joy, because I feel like homeschooling is an actual journey. It's not, just take it one year at a time. Like it's an actual look far ahead and then kind of work backwards and then take it one day at a time. But that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like I've said this a couple of times in the beginning of my first handful of podcasts, but it's true that most of the moms that I've met with for the podcast have been moms who are further along in their homeschooling journey, who are either graduated all of their homeschoolers so far or are close to it. And then you having grandkids that you're getting to help homeschool. I just feel like it's really powerful for us moms who are not as far along on the journey to be able to look and see, like you're saying, like see down the path a little bit ahead of us and kind of be able to follow along and be encouraged to keep going. So it's a really special thing. And
Thank you. Yeah, I wish that I had had that, when I began homeschooling. And that was the main reason for sharing, when I go speak or anyplace else. I always just want to meet moms that are in different seasons, because I've basically lived through all of those different seasons, and they're going to be different for everyone. But there's some common denominators and foundations that I think exist in the homeschool world that will carry us through no matter what type of homeschooling we approach or how we homeschool. So, yeah, it's been a blessing.
it's really a treasure. And just, I'm actually thinking while you're talking about how, when I got to hear you speak at a women's conference, how you were speaking about the importance of intergenerational discipleship. I think that was the terminology that you used, or the wording that you used. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how much that applies to, yes, our faith and our motherhood and being wives, but especially homeschooling as well. Like being able to have moms that are further along the way that we can learn from and be encouraged by, as much as having moms that are in the same season walking alongside of us, and then being able to extend whatever knowledge or insight we have from how far we've come. So it's really cool, because I love how in your book, I feel like you touch on, it's not just for one type of homeschooling mom. So can you share Like, who is your book, Hope for Your Homeschool, Start Strong, Stay the Course, and Finish with Joy for?
Mhm. Right. Well, this book is for anyone that has made the choice to homeschool, is homeschooling near the end, in the middle, and also for that person that's considering homeschooling. I think that sometimes we have a lot of fears that exist from the unknown, and sometimes we have fears from watching other people struggle, and that keeps us from making decisions. And this is a big decision. But when I wrote this book, I kept considering all of the different moms that I've met, and more importantly, myself, as I homeschooled, 10 children. And many times it was, seven children with three babies, and um, lots of different seasons. And it was never just about homeschooling. But I feel like anyone that is considering that or going through it, and that last section of the book, Finish with Joy, I feel like that's such a great capstone, because a lot of times we think if we can just get to the end, or we get near the end, we're like, I can't believe it's almost over. But to find a way to finish with joy, if you can think about that even as you begin, like, how is that even possible? And so that was my point, was that we could all find hope along the way.
Gosh, for me, that part is so encouraging because I have a senior this year. And it's
Mm,
interesting because I also have a preschooler. So I'm like,
hmm
I feel like I'm in different stages of the journey at the same
hmm
time. And so
Yeah.
I have, a 4, a 5, a 9, a 13, and an almost 17-year-old. And so
hmm
while I'm doing numbers and letters with my youngest, I'm also thinking about, oh my gosh, like we are finishing. I don't even like the word. I don't even like to say it. Like, we're finishing the journey with my oldest. And it's been
hmm
really hard to process. And so
hmm
reading, not only reading your book, but then hearing you talk about like what comes after that, like when they graduate, that's
hmm
not like the end of our journey with our child, right? And
Right.
so it's really encouraging to think about the different stages and kind of be able to look down the road a little bit, but also to know like that it doesn't end there. So finishing maybe the homeschool journey, but then maybe I'll be homeschooling my grandkids like you are. Like, that's kind
Yeah.
of as I've been reading, I've been underlining so many things
hmm
that I just want to
Yeah.
remember and I want to go back to because it's all so good. And like I said, I feel like every section of the book is relevant to me, even at this
Mm.
moment, right? I feel like there are different parts of the book that will be more relevant at different stages in someone's journey, homeschooling. But for some people, it's like, no, this is all relevant right now.
Mm. Yeah.
I have so many favorite parts that I've underlined. Do you have a favorite part of the book?
I mean, there are a few favorite parts that stand out to me. When you write a book, it's almost like reliving your life. But I was also trying to think backwards to what I would have wanted in advance. It was like I needed to think about what I had experienced, but also think, what do I wish someone had told me? So I had tried to merge those two things into each chapter. But some things that stand out to me, some favorite chapters, one of those is to not sacrifice the relationship with your children for the sake of homeschooling. That was a really big lesson that I learned. And I just wish that I could tell every single mom or parent or dad homeschooling this, just that one sentence, don't sacrifice relationship, because sometimes on the altar of excellence, or the altar of achieving a certain style of homeschooling, or a checklist, or a schedule, or getting it all done, or a degree, whatever it is that we use as our measure of success for homeschooling, we lose time, valuable quality time that other moms get to just maybe pick up and spend that time outside of academics. And not only that, there's a strain and a stress that can exist between certain personalities and parenting, trying to get the schoolwork done on top of like homework and responsibilities and like zones, or, like chores, and just living life and enjoying life together. And sometimes that relationship comes last in homeschooling. And so I learned the hard way with my firstborn daughter. And uh we worked on that really hard, but I realized that's not worth it. So we had to make some changes. Three favorite words in my book, in my homeschool journey, are to plan, and to pace, and to pivot. And so we had to pivot really hard when we realized that, my husband and I realized, wow, our relationship is struggling with some of our kids because we have this altar of excellence that we're trying to achieve and forgetting about the whole child.
Mm. That's so good. I actually recently had one of my children. This was like hard for me to hear, but I was super thankful that he shared it. Like
Hmm.
basically tell me I don't feel like I get any time with you.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was completely taken off guard because I'm like, we're together 24/7. I'm like, what do you mean? We're
Yeah.
together all the time. I would think you actually want a little bit of time away from me. But it isn't necessarily like the time. It's like the
Yeah.
quality, right? The connection, the
Hmm.
one-on-one. And
Hmm.
I was thankful because it gave me something that I could be more intentional about. Like, oh, okay, like
Hmm.
this relationship maybe needs a little bit more attention in different ways. And so
Yeah.
it's a
Hmm.
good reminder when you're trying to figure out what the priorities should be. Because I feel like that's something that I struggle with that I feel like maybe a lot of other moms, or I know at least some other moms do, because I get this question, like moms will DM me over on Instagram or something and say, like,
Hmm.
how do I know? Like, I just feel like I don't know if I'm doing enough or if I'm doing too much. And like, there's this constant figuring out of like, are my priorities right and balanced and straight? And so I
Hmm.
feel like really where you talk about that in the book is like, when in doubt, like the relationship.
Yeah, right.
And
It can look differently. It can look like quality time. Maybe we're sacrificing quality time over academic or, what we call homeschooling in our homes. Or it can be we are sacrificing a good relationship. So, with my older daughter and I, we just were always struggling with her getting the work done. And while we're homeschooling, our relationship was strained. When I'm with her mom, things were fine. But when she had to get her schoolwork done, there was this huge strain. And one of us would end up in tears by the end of the day, almost every single day. And so I had to take a big step back, make some changes, realize who she is uniquely. And that's another chapter in the book that is my favorite, is learning how your children learn. And, that could to some parents equate to, wow, that's a lot of work if I have to do that for every single child, if I have more than one or two. But really, it makes things so much easier. And so I really enjoyed that part of homeschooling. And I feel like that was a huge plus to me in our homeschool approach, is learning how each of my children learned, not just like learning styles, but those special things about them that made them unique. So, like my older daughter, she was a very strong leader. She was an entrepreneur. She just wanted to create and to work on things that weren't just pen and paper. Even those things were important, but she was my firstborn daughter, so in my mind, we had to homeschool like the public school, and it took a long time to get out of that mold. And so our sacrifice it took a strain, it took a hit, but we made some big changes and now we're best friends and business partners. And it's just really amazing to see what happens when you pay attention to the heart of the child.
yeah, that's really cool. It's really encouraging again to hear
Mm.
you could have such a tough time, such a frustrating time, a time that doesn't maybe feel like there's a lot of hope, ending in
Mhm.
tears on an almost daily basis, because I feel like all of us have been there. And maybe it's not every day, but I
Mhm.
would venture to say that most homeschool moms feel discouraged at least once on
Mhm.
most days, right?
Mhm.
And so that can oftentimes, I feel like, especially for newer homeschool moms, feel like, am I doing the wrong thing?
Mhm.
Did I make a mistake here? Would it be better off if I sent them to school? In chapter 2, the mistakes I will make, which you start off like pretty early on talking about mistakes, which I
Mhm.
actually found refreshing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like, we're not going to just talk about, like, look at all of these things that I did well and that you can do to also do well. Like, let's just
Yeah.
lay it all out. And this is going to like a simple line, but I underlined it and it says, how can I say this gently? At some point, you will feel defeated and want to give up.
Right.
So I think it's so special that you lay it out there like it is normal to feel like you want to give
Mhm.
up. And so, could you just speak to that a little bit
Mhm.
for the mom that maybe feels like she wants to give up, or she will get to that point to feel like she wants to give up?
Right. And I felt when I wrote that chapter, the publisher and I went back and forth because, when you hear from a veteran homeschooler or someone's, that's been homeschooling a long time, or you listen to a podcast and you don't get to meet someone in person and you don't really know them, you may think, wow, I'm not like them, or it must have been a breeze that they're so calm and cool and collected. Well, you didn't see me when I had all those things happening. And so I wanted it to be right in the beginning of the book so that I can break down those walls of misunderstanding or assumptions on what it could look like. And really the reality is that at some point you will be discouraged, whether it's your first day or your middle of your season, and you may have the greatest, running session of non-discouragement going, but at some point there will be something that's hard. And it may not be, and I write about this a lot in my book, it may not be the homeschooling or your children that is the hard thing. It may be something in your life, like your world, that it's difficult, finances, a health crisis. It could be a relationship. It could be, you're moving. It could be that makes homeschooling hard. And so I think it would be wrong of us to pretend that it's easy to do this, and just to say right off the bat, it's going to be like anything else. And I tell my kids this: anything worth doing, work hard at it, and it's going to be so worth it, and this is worth doing. And I want moms to hear that, like, it's so worth it, even when it's discouraging and hard. Um, and I tell my older children who are homeschooling this also. If you think this is going to be a breeze because you're now like these successful adults and your mom did this, then I want you to know we're all going to make mistakes, and all of our mistakes are going to be a little different, but we will make mistakes. And that should not be a reason to give up.
Yeah.
We don't want our kids to just give up because they make a mistake. Like, let's erase it. Let's work on it. And so I think to give ourselves permission right off the bat, and that's why I wrote that in the beginning of the book, to say, wow, okay, I'm going to make a mistake. And then when it happens or things are hard, we can recognize that and say, okay, we're just going to change. We're going to tweak this. We're going to see how we can do this differently. And, here I am homeschooling, 28 years later, and I'm still changing things because life is different all the time. So that's the joy of homeschooling. It's not a one size fits all, and you can change things. So I think with like any situation in life, when we come across something that's difficult, we as moms, I think moms are great at this, finding a way through it and not around it. And that teaches so much to our kids: perseverance, diligence, and they, at the end, they won't remember all the hours you sat and did math problems. They won't remember you staying up to correct papers if you do, or preparing these cool science lessons, or taking them on field trips. They don't really remember all that. So I want everyone to hear that. They remember some of it. There will be some standout moments, but what they do remember is your character. And I will tell you that because that's what my kids have told me. Mom, I just remember you, exhausted and weary, but you showed up for us. They didn't say, remember that field trip we took to, this play on Charles Dickens? Like, they never say that. My adult children remember the sacrifice that it took for me to homeschool my children. And they tell me all the time, even launching this book. So I hope moms can hold on to that when they feel like they're messing things up or getting discouraged.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Just remembering, like, in those frustrating moments too, or the hard seasons, because it's like there's
Yeah.
moments and then there's seasons, and they like
Mm.
last different lengths of time. That if some of the things that are academic, or maybe we usually do science experiments, but we just don't have the bandwidth for it, or we usually do our projects or field trips, but we don't have the finances for it, that it's really how we carry ourselves and our
Mhm.
character and how we love them, and hold our relationship above all of that, that they'll remember.
Right.
That's really special. So I'm really excited because I'm actually going to get to hear you speak in person again really soon.
Mhm.
I don't know if you know that, but I'm going to get
Oh,
to hear you
yay.
at a homeschool conference. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm
Me
just
too.
sure that other moms are going to be wanting to hear more hope from you and learn
Mm.
more from you and be encouraged by you. And so, what's the best place for moms to find you?
Well, I'm all over the web, so my book can be bought, anywhere books are sold, I think, online. But my shop is at September and Co. shop online on the internet, and then of course on Instagram. My website blogish type thing. It's, I don't use it very often, but it's septembermccarthy.net. People can read more about me there. But I really kind of stay on Instagram a lot. And then on my Instagram, locations where I'm speaking and things like that, conferences, and we set up our shop, September and Co. So I love to connect with people. I'm a strong introvert, but I love to connect like on a personal level with people. So I hope someone that's listening will reach out and say hi, and that maybe I'll see them at some of these conferences coming up.
Yeah, so exciting. So definitely grab September's book. It has been such an encouragement to me for all of my phases that I'm in, and connect with her. All of her information will be in the show notes. So thank you so much, September, for chatting with me.
Thank you. Thank you. I just love chatting with you anytime, and I can't wait to see you soon.
I hope you enjoyed getting to listen in on my conversation with September all about hope for our homeschools. I hope that you found hope in this conversation. And as I mentioned, you will find all of September's contact info in the show notes. So if you want to go find more hope and inspiration from her, you will know where to find her. If you are enjoying the Rooted Home Life podcast, please go and leave us a review. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. I hope you will join us very soon for our next episode, where we will talk more about cultivating home and chasing adventure with our children.